The story today begins with a family living their life in complete happiness, but they didn't know that in a few moments, something would happen to them. The fear itself is afraid to think about it. The man and his wife were busy talking when they suddenly heard a scream and a cry coming from outside. When the two of them went out of the house, they saw that outside was in a state of chaos and people were leaving their homes. And they ran, and there was a big disaster that was going to happen. Jason and Beth saw that their neighbors were also terrified and were leaving their homes quickly. Jason asked his neighbor what's going on. "Why are you leaving your homes like this and leaving?" But the people were in such a hurry that they didn't even answer Jason's question, and they were there. They saw that their neighbor's son also knew something when Jason asked the kid, "Where are you guys going?" The kid replied and said that his dad is a government officer and said there's a toxic virus that turns normal humans into monsters. But then the kid's mom came and took him to leave. Jason asked the kid's mom. "He's talking about the AM virus," the kid's mom told him. "There's no time to explain. Take your wife and daughter and get out of this city as far as you can." When Jason and Beth heard that, they got really scared. Then Jason, without thinking, got his family in the car and started driving to get out of the city. But the people on the road saw that the neighbors who were fleeing were returning, which made them even more surprised. And in front of them, people were stuck in the crowd when Jason and his family got out of the vehicle. They saw that the only road to exit the city was blocked by the police. And in the sky, there were helicopters everywhere, monitoring everything. So they started to inform. People are saying that there's a deadly virus spreading in the city and that they need to return to their homes quickly. Jason is puzzled by this, wondering how it is that when there's a virus in the city, instead of evacuating people, they're being told to stay. Suddenly, a large boulder fell from the mountain next to them and landed on their car, which terrified them. It started shaking, and suddenly from behind the mountain, two warplanes appeared and headed towards the city. These planes started dropping bombs on the entire city, turning it to ashes. And Jason, immediately understood that if they had listened to the police and returned home, they would have been safe after the planes had left. The warplanes started heading towards the people on the road, and when they saw that, chaos erupted among everyone, and they all understood that the government wanted to kill. Closed. A massive explosion occurred above, but fortunately, they were underneath in the shelter and survived. But what puzzled them was what this virus was that made the government kill all the city's inhabitants, and they didn't understand anything or grasp the situation. All they knew was that the moment they have to live, they really need to take shelter in this refuge and lock themselves in very well. But the big problem was that they would live here until when and find food and drink from where. The only good thing is that if you have canned food that is expired, but it was enough for 3 people for a relatively long time. Jason, who was Beth, was very anxious and started thinking seriously about her little daughter Joy. And she says to herself, "I wonder if she got tired. If something happened to her, what would they do with her?" And Beth, as she closed the door with her hands, got a deep and very painful injury. The two were terrified that the venomous virus. Their body income is also without them knowing, but that wasn't the time for much thinking. They had to secure the shelter before anything so that no one could open the door from above. Jason locked the shelter door with a strong iron chain and decided that they had to hide and live here for a while. Life underground was not easy at all. Every day, the same repetitive food and the water they drank was full of mud. And in their only free time, they tried to entertain themselves by playing cards. Their connection to the outside world was completely cut off, as if they were in severe isolation. After long days of living here, "I'm so fed up with this shelter and I feel like we're trapped, but what would we do if we went outside? We wouldn't survive in this world." I felt like Jason's family was really at the end of the world. Joey asked her father while she was getting anxious. "Daddy, how long are we going to stay here?" Jason didn't have any convincing answers and told his daughter that once the virus outside goes away, they would go out and return to their normal lives, and he would put his fingers on her eyes and make her imagine the outside world as it used to be. The days turned into weeks and then months, and they didn't know they were waiting to go out. More than 300 full days in this shelter, Goey would look at the outside world every day through the simple microscope her mother made for her, and all she would see was a scene of complete destruction. The whole world was burned to ashes, and there was no sign of human existence. The little girl started to feel that they might be the last people alive in the whole world. Her mother tried to calm her down and told her not to think that way. Maybe her friends are also hiding like them in another place far away. Night had fallen and it was time for dinner, and the food they had was also running out. They were very solid, so the three of them used to eat a little because they were going to be okay. But today, because Joy was very determined, they gave her a whole box. When Joy opened the box, she found it empty from the inside, and behind the box there was a small date palm, and there was something that stole food from it named Beth. She checked all the remaining boxes and found that 12 full boxes were empty, which really annoyed them because that was their food for 2 whole weeks. So she looked towards the ventilation network and guessed that maybe a rat had entered and taken the food and escaped. And she said if it's a rat, we have to kill it quickly or it will ruin all our food. And we won't find anything to eat. Jason, when he saw his daughter's upset and sad face, he guided her and told her not to be upset over small things like this. If the food is finished, I'll go upstairs and bring some things and come back to you the next day. And Joy is playing with her mother with the blocks when they suddenly heard a faint sound coming from behind them. And when Joy looked back, she found a small mouse. He went in to steal canned food, and before the mouse could escape, Joey alerted his family quickly. Today, they had to kill that mouse by any means. Jason, with extreme anger, pulled out a knife and went to cut it. But the little mouse was too fast and escaped from Jason's strike and also knocked over the lamp that was on the trapeze, and as soon as he was about to enter his hole, a bat suddenly flew out and killed the rat in the last moment, and they were all celebrating the killing of the rat. But on the other hand, the lamp that fell started a small fire in the room. Jason ran to put out the lamp, but the scene was very helpful. Jason's lamp caught fire, and the tablecloth was all on fire when the table broke, and he quickly cut the curtain and tried to put out the fire. And Jason grabbed half a bucket of water from the bathroom and quickly threw it on the fire. And somehow the two of them were able to put out the fire in the end. But unfortunately, the danger is still not over. Instead, it got worse for them because they managed to put out the fire. But the massive amount of smoke it produced filled the entire shelter, and the smoke started coming out through the ventilation system. And when they saw that, they all got terrified because the smoke could have given away their location. So everyone held their breath. They fell into silence, and Jason said the darkness of night could hide them in smoke, and no one would know their location. The three of them stayed awake all night in continuous fear and anxiety. On the second morning, to reassure themselves, they looked under the microscope at their arms and legs, which were frozen with fear because they saw that their skin was a cloud of smoke, and that made them worry even more, and that confirmed that the secret of their location was finally revealed. Then Beth said that if there is smoke, there must be ash accumulated next to it, which anyone can use to know their location, and therefore they had to clean it up. The ash immediately, and then the man and his wife decided to leave the shelter and clean the ash themselves. And before they left, Jason stood up and looked at his daughter Joy and said to her in a serious tone, "I promise you, Joy, no matter what you hear from outside or what happens, no matter what, you will never leave here. Ever, ever." And after that, they took a promise from her, and they carefully opened the door chain and heard the voices coming from outside, and they kept standing, focusing on every move. And when they made sure that there was no one outside, the two of them quietly opened the shelter door and went out. And now their daughter Dewey was left alone inside, and she was sitting in complete isolation, waiting for her family to return. But after she waited, one of them went back. Tolate sat on the chair and looked through the binoculars to see what was happening outside. And after a while, she saw that her family was trying to hide the shelter door to conceal it. But at that moment, Joy saw something strange that made her stand up in fear in the distant forest. A black dog was moving quickly and getting closer to them. The little girl screamed at the top of her voice and told her father to look behind him quickly. But the distance was too far, and unfortunately her family didn't hear her. And in the midst of fear and worry, the girl forgot her childish fear and quickly went up the stairs and got out of the shelter as soon as she went out in shock that her family was no longer in the same place. The girl was extremely worried and started calling out to her family in a loud voice, and suddenly someone appeared from behind her. It was one of those who were left, and her mother, who caught up with her. And after a few seconds, a herd of wild deer passed by them at an incredibly fast speed. The three of them escaped safely. Beth's fear increased manifold because the deer's escape in this manner must have been caused by something extremely dangerous. Everyone sensed the approaching danger and ran quickly back towards the shelter. Entering it at the last moment, Jason locked the shelter door with a wooden plank and tied it with a very strong iron chain. He told everyone to remain completely silent, and then they started hearing slow footsteps from above, and there was something massive coming towards the shelter door. The footsteps continued to circle above the shelter for several long minutes, and the three of them very slowly started to move away from the door. Maybe whatever was up there still hadn't sensed that there was someone there. I'm hiding under the bed. Overcome with fear, I started crying, but I quickly silenced her and told her in a frightened tone, If the sound gets out, we'll all be finished in an instant. The three of us moved away from the shelter door and were trying to distance ourselves so that if someone opened the door from above, they wouldn't see us sitting underneath. But then the bride suddenly appeared. The joy that was in her hand got caught on a nail and the metal part started to come off with the thread. When Jason and Beth saw that, their hearts stopped because the thread was tied to the sound button inside the doll. And before they could do anything, the nail came off suddenly, and at the same moment, a loud noise came from the bride. Jason quickly and without thinking cut the bride in half and broke the earpiece that was in it. But unfortunately, it was too late. The thing that was above the shelter that was chasing them felt their presence, and suddenly a very loud crashing sound came from above, followed by heavy footsteps that stopped exactly above the shelter door, and finally the monster found their place and started trying to open it with all its might. It was pulling the shelter cover with tremendous force, and although it was locked with chains, the danger was clearly felt. The monster above knew that there must be someone hiding underneath. And although the door was locked with chains, the iron was strong, but in front of the power of this terrifying thing, the chains started to break one after the other. When Jason saw this, he immediately knew that the door wouldn't hold for long, so he rushed quickly inside and started to remove the valve of the old water pump. Here, Beth also showed great courage and climbed up the ladder. She used her entire body weight to pull the chain and keep the door closed for as long as possible. But despite all this, the iron gate began to open slowly and eerily. And at that moment, a black figure appeared above the door, its eyes gleaming like a light in the darkness. Jason, without hesitation, attacked it with the pipe and hit it, and it fell to the ground quickly, and then he immediately pushed the figure at the door so it could lock it and prevent it from opening again. And the strange thing is that this thing, after a few seconds, escaped from there. But Jason's body was still shaking hard, and he had never imagined that the outside world was not only full of merciless soldiers, but also full of dangerous monsters roaming the streets. They all sat next to the stairs in a state of extreme despair because their location had been discovered and at any moment they could be attacked again, and they knew that this time only one person came. But next time when they come, their number will be much larger. And then they won't be able to do anything to defend themselves after a while. The entire closet shook violently. Jason and Beth realized at the same moment that the terrifying creature they saw had brought the rest of its companions with it. The noises from above became clearer and more ominous, and the loud sound made them certain that thousands of creatures were running directly above their heads and gathering inside the shelter. Jason, Beth, and Joey were trembling with fear, their hearts racing at an incredible speed, and suddenly the attack began with a force that was much stronger than before, and the strong iron door that was their source of safety was crushed and fell like a weak leaf. And on the door of the shelter, many eyes appeared, shining in the darkness. It was as if a collective fear had erupted among them, but the monsters also charged after them in a terrifying sprint, one of them throwing her oil lamp at Stella and Aster, which ignited a huge flame that separated them from the monsters for a few moments, and they grabbed the door and closed it shut. The road behind them, they're going as fast as they can, but they know it won't stop the creatures for long, and unfortunately, they have no way to escape at this moment. Joey, with her small eyes, saw a ventilation opening that opens to the ground. Jason, with his strength, quickly and with all his might, broke it and pulled his wife and daughter out, as if he's trying. He would save them at any cost. But when he tried to get out, he found himself stuck because of the narrowness of the place and the silence and the pressure. He couldn't move to the other side. The monsters were getting closer and closer to him, and now in any way, Jason had to get out and didn't find any other solution. So he broke his own shoulder bone to free his body. When he did that, he screamed in a very loud voice, but quickly controlled himself and crawled to the opening. Wasting no time, she stretched out her hand with all her might and started pulling him out. And as soon as Jason was out, a huge creature appeared out of nowhere and grabbed Jason's leg with great force at that moment. Jason realized that his rescue was impossible and there was no hope for escape. He looked into his wife's eyes and told her in words full of love and despair, "No matter what happens, nothing will happen to you." And in the same second, the monster pulled him inside the shelter. But instead of surrendering to the monster, Jason screamed and said, "Come and show me what you have." Beth and Joy, when they looked down, they heard terrifying screams coming from the shelter. Beth knew her husband was fighting to give them time to escape, and despite the pain and tears, she took her daughter and started running away. As they were escaping, they covered a long distance, but on the way, they felt something strange and frightening. They saw the highway that used to open up to the outside world is now closed off with huge and massive barriers. meaning that in the end, there's no chance of escaping the city. And at that moment, a helicopter appeared from a distance. When Beth looked back at it, she discovered it was a military helicopter. And as it drew closer to them, it shone a powerful spotlight that covered the entire area. On Monday, they were about to escape, but suddenly a large net fell on them from above, throwing them to the ground, and they were caught in it very tightly. Beth and Joey tried in every way to free themselves from the iron net, but the net was strong and held them tightly. And through the openings of the net, Beth saw dark visions approaching quickly and their green eyes gleaming in the darkness. And from here, the real secret began to unfold. The people who were wearing black suits and guns and their eyes were yellow, and who were always thought of as monsters or aliens, turned out to be soldiers wearing uniforms. They were given gas masks and night vision goggles, but the terrifying question now is, why has the army become an enemy of these people? The secret is this, my friend. We will discover it together now. Right now. Beth and Joey were completely under the control of the soldiers, and one of them pulled out a large syringe and injected them both in the neck. After they did a quick analysis of their blood, they discovered that both of them were infected with the deadly virus, which means they pose a threat to any place on Earth. Simply put, their fate will be death. The truth was very shocking. As soon as the virus spread, almost the entire small city was infected with it. This virus was being transmitted through the air and spreading among people at an incredibly rapid rate without anyone taking notice. The infected individuals were unaware that they were ill,